Magella here, and welcome to another CLV Boost tutorial. In this tutorial video, we're going to talk about persistent email sales tactics. This is a favorite topic of mine, and I believe it's going to be one of the most actionable topics that we've had in any of our tutorials. And I'll tell you exactly why in just a second. I see it as one of the most common email sales errors, and we'll go into how those errors manifest themselves, which is going to be the problem in terms of that we'll need to address over the course of the rest of this brief chat. We're going to go into the various methods of persistency in email sales for both e-commerce and for service businesses, and how this does not have to be salesy. This does not have to be pushy, although it can be, in order to continuously drive sales with email. A lot of people make that mistake and think that they have to be overt about sales, but there's a lot of ways to be able to drive appointments and sales online without inherently being salesy. And we're going to go into some of the various methods that we can use in e-commerce or as a service business, depending on what you are and what you need to do for your own business. Then we're going to fix up some of our problem examples, some of the very common blasé and very weak email sales tactics that we see in the e-commerce and the service businesses time and time again, and how those might be patched up in different examples. So we'll give you some ideas of how to apply these actual notions, and then we're going to provide you with some immediate action steps to improve your own email sales and overcome the sales excuses that might be holding you back right now from allowing email to be a higher driver of sales for your own company and business. So moving along. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is one of the most actionable topics that I've ever covered, so please have a pen and paper ready while you're viewing. My promise for you is that you'll find immediate applications in your current email systems and regimens, and you'll see significant returns by implementing these fundamentals, even just a few of the tactics that you learned today. So I'm very excited about today's presentation. So let's dive in here. What do we got? All right. So for me, one of the most common errors that I diagnose in email autoresponders and often in email newsletters and broadcast messages as well is lack of persistent effort in selling. There's a few other big ones. Not communicating benefits is often very common in terms of email blunders that we have to correct. But man, persistency is something that so many companies drop the ball on. And it's just the same as in face-to-face selling. Few salespeople have the gusto to try and try again. Many people give up far too early, and this is despite the fact that most people understand that more attempts makes you more likely to sell. Go ahead and do all the research you want to do in terms of the best sales companies in the world and the best sales folks in the world, and determine how valuable persistency is, but we tend to leave that by the wayside in email. So here's one common example of an error that we might see in the e-commerce or the internet marketing space. Somebody has a product that they want to sell online. Doesn't matter to me whether it's a downloadable video course on how to do marketing, or whether it's a baby stroller, or some kind of umbrella. It doesn't matter at all what you're selling in the e-commerce space. A lot of the time in internet marketing or kind of pure e-commerce, opt-in e-commerce, folks will have some kind of an educational series of emails, maybe 3 or 4 emails, sort of introduces folks to the company and introduces them to sort of what they're doing and things along those lines, and just purely educational, no real push to sale. Not saying you have to, but no chance to buy at all. And then finally on email 6, they'll sort of release their product, or they'll do a little bit of an overt push to the product, or they'll mention the product overtly. And if the people don't buy from that email, they'll say, shucks, that wasn't a good lead. That person there, they weren't going to buy. I tried right there on email 6 and they didn't buy. But bear in mind, in email, your open rates are far from 100%. So throw in a sales opportunity and only one email in a 6-email sequence means that your conversion rate might look something like this. So on day 1, if you're lucky, you're getting 50% of these folks to open. Maybe you'll get a little bit more. Day 3, maybe you're down to 22, maybe 30% open. And by the time day 6 rolls around, maybe you're down to 15% open. Maybe you're down to 10, 20, somewhere in that ballpark. So if only 1 in 6 of the people who are even on your email list have the opportunity to even see this email, never mind convert, you might be in trouble. So again, if we have only 15% of the total leads that are even seeing this offer, that even get exposure, and I'm only talking about 1 exposure, then we're going to have a very hard time selling. Giving 1 exposure to a tiny fragment of our total volume of prospects we are going to be between a rock and a hard place when it comes to actually driving profits with email, which is, of course, kind of our whole job over here. Another boring example of sort of email that would neglect the tenets and principles of sales and being persistent in sales would be in the consulting or service business. Oftentimes, folks that aren't selling a product but are selling their own expertise, let's say they are a PR consultant or we've worked with folks who were crowdfunding consultants, or maybe these folks are in some kind of a brick and mortar business where they perform some kind of a service for folks. Maybe it's some kind of dry cleaning or something like that. Whatever the case may be, we're not selling through buy buttons. We're selling through providing a literal service. And for the sake of this example, let's say that we are working with a consultancy. So the real ROI on an email here is not buy now on the internet, it's booking an appointment. It's how many times do we get on the phone with qualified people every time we send out emails. The answer should in general be that per newsletter, per email, so long as it's got a legitimate sales purpose, we can make the phone ring. We can keep sales folks busy, and we can drive sales through the front door. Oftentimes that's neglected. So in this particular example, representative of a lot of consultancies that we've seen out there doing email, most of whom are not necessarily focusing on email, sometimes to their grand detriment. This might be a marketing company here. They're selling a service, and they have a monthly newsletter that's little more than some kind of a glorified press release about all of the company's achievements. So once a month, they send out a very bland, completely no call to action email that essentially just talks about, hey, we were featured here, and we just hired this new guy, and this is how cool we are. Oftentimes, this is sort of the quote unquote professional, what is called sort of professional approach to doing email, where there's really no point other than sort of bragging and telling people that you're still alive as a business. And I'm sure you've all gotten emails like this, and you've yawned and you've clicked spam. So a business along these lines, they might have spent months or maybe even years using email as a kind of branding or bragging mechanism that they've accepted can never really truly impact their bottom line. It's just sort of this ongoing exposure that hopefully will have some aggregately beneficial karmic thing that'll happen, and eventually it'll be good for them, and it's good to send out emails because you shouldn't waste your prospects. So let's just send them bragging stuff that never actually drives them towards meaningful business objectives. Again, a common error in the service business domain, particularly service sold over the phone, sold in person, where expertise is being emphasized. And many of you who are listening in right now may in fact have your own consultancy, your own agency, your own higher ticket service. You'll probably recognize sort of the blandness of the emails in a lot of the industries that you run in. So in a moment, we're going to talk about why this is an overt marketing blunder, even though it seems as though overtly selling in a professional service might be the wrong approach. I would agree, actually, but that does not mean we should cut out sales altogether if you are a service business trying to be quote-unquote professional. We can be professional and also drive phone calls, make the phone ring, keep salespeople busy, and actually make money. So now, before we go into specific tools that you can use in your business to improve your sales and avoid a weak email sales process and the resulting drop in revenue, let's examine some of the common selling situations in which persistency would unquestionably be effective. So what I really want to draw to your mind now, and I think this will help open up your mind to seeing more sales possibilities in your own email systems and regimens, which is the entire point of this presentation. But going through these examples, I want to make the idea click. Not only that there's a lot of ways to skin the cat in terms of how to quote unquote sell, how to move forward a sale, but also that persistency is across the board almost unquestionably useful when it comes to selling in so many varied situations. And I'm going to give you a few that you might use as useful analogies moving forward in terms of finding new ways to sell in your own email autoresponders or your own email broadcast. So we're going to go into those individual tools in a second, but let's look at some situations. Let's say, for example, you are an IBM salesman selling supercomputers. What do you want to do to sell supercomputers? Do you call the company you want to sell to, leave a voicemail, and then call another company and just say, man, I left them a voicemail. I guess it's over. Would you do that? Of course, you wouldn't. You'd be fired immediately. So, an IBM salesman selling supercomputers for gargantuan, eight-figure contracts, um, would be calling at different times. They'd be using their secretary to call, maybe some different voice on the voicemail, or a different voice interacting with the other secretary might go through a little bit better. We might be able to eke out some additional information. They might show up and knock on the door at different times. They might come in at 7 in the morning and see if the boss is there. They might come in when things are closing. They might come in during lunch. They might even bring some food. They might use different sales approaches. They could frame their written, if they mail a letter, or their email, their electronic communication, in the language of opportunity. They could talk about, being able to find time to carve out a little bit of time to present an opportunity, or they might change up their language. They might look at really solving a problem. They might know the supercomputers that this business is using, and they might know IBM's strategic advantage for this company, and they might say, frame the meeting and frame the ask, which is the appointment, in a way where, hey, we're really looking to solve an overt problem. I know who you're using now. I know why we're better. Here's the issues I bet you're running up with. Let's find a time to chat, etc. So the point being here, an IBM salesman selling supercomputers would try many, many times over, and he would continuously try a variety of effective approaches. And anybody who sells supercomputers at IBM, I'm certain, would be able to tell you that they do just that. That they're pretty persistent folks. Amazon.com. What would you do if you were Amazon.com? Would you let people buy a book? And then if they didn't buy another book right then, maybe you'd say, you know what, maybe they're just not a book buyer. I guess I'll give up. Or would you sell them on the thank you page after the first purchase? Would you send them immediate email follow-ups with other recommended books? Would you, sell them on something else that is relevant the next time they show up to Amazon? As soon as they log in, you know what their past purchases are. You rotate the most highly converting related offers and products to them. Maybe you'd also send out discount codes and seasonal packages and bonuses and specials and things along those lines. And if you're an e-commerce giant, maybe you would try all of these tactics. And I can tell you, Amazon would try many, many times over. And they would continuously try a variety of effective approaches, which, if you've ever bought anything from Amazon, you'll certainly learn that they do. How about a child who's trying to go out for ice cream? People don't think about this like sales, but this is convincing folks to move forward with an action. In this case, the appointment is in the form of getting ice cream. This might be out in the neighborhood, guy driving around the ice cream truck. This might be driving to the ice cream shop itself. But what might a child do who's aiming to be persistent in selling their parents on allowing them to go out and get an ice cream, selling their parents on paying good money for the kid themselves to eat some ice cream? What might they do? They might try their mother first, knowing they got a better shot with mom. She's more sympathetic. She's in a better mood today, and they might try their father second. Maybe they'd use a kind of expecting enthusiasm. They'd say, "Hey, mom, it's such a nice day outside. Let's go grab some ice cream," and sort of try to bring the parent right up into that same degree of enthusiasm. Or maybe they try a kind of pouting and groveling approach. They talk about how hard this week has been and how it hasn't been sunny in forever, and they don't even remember what ice cream tastes like, and they really want to go, and they've been away from ice cream for so long, and they really want it again. Maybe they throw a tantrum. Maybe they'd really start crying and throwing things, and really getting angry, and maybe that would solicit the right response in their parent. Maybe they convince their mom or their dad that it's actually them that want ice cream too. Hey, mom, isn't it, it's so hot out today? Wouldn't it be great to get some ice cream? Maybe they could convince their parent that it's actually them who wants ice cream. I can assure you that a child who wants to go out for ice cream would try many, many times over, and he would continuously try a variety of effective approaches. And if you've ever been around a child who really wants to get ice cream, you'll come to the understanding that in general they do. So if we can agree that persistency, by golly, is effective, works in convincing folks to take a next step forward, it's really not ideal to give up flat, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's face-to-face, no matter what you're selling, then why do we not reflect a persistent and varied approach when we're selling an email? Why is that? And I believe that often it's because we're simply unaware of the various tools of indirect and direct email sales tactics. Or sometimes folks just aren't aware of how valuable persistency is. Unlike the IBM salesman, who definitely knows how valuable it is, unlike Amazon, who certainly knows how valuable it is, and unlike the child who wants ice cream, again, all of those folks certainly understand the value of persistency. I'm assuring you via this brief call here that persistency is important in your sales process as well. We want to make sure that we're on top of folks. It doesn't have to be overt and painfully salesy, but it should be enough to be able to present them with consistent offers. So let's get into our tools. Let's take a moment now and examine some of the very tools available to online marketers who want to sell effectively with email. These tools work just as well for service businesses as they do for e-commerce, so brainstorm with me as we cover some of these various tactics at your disposal. What I want you to do as we're covering these various sales tools is consider, as I speak about them individually, very briefly here, by the way, this is not going to be a 2-hour presentation, very briefly, think about them individually about which might be most applicable for your audience, which might be a good fit for your autoresponders, for your regular newsletters, which might solicit that next step forward from your prospects if you use them properly. I can almost assure you that there's additional opportunities to use examples from nearly every category that we have in here in terms of being able to lift sales at your particular company. You will happen to know your marketing process and your prospects better than I do. So think through this as we cover these tools and ask yourself, which of these can I integrate now? And we're going to cover more of that at the end and give you some actionable steps to go home with. But let's go ahead and move through. First, we can look at message. So message is how you're conveying whatever your content actually is. If you're sending out an email, one big quote-unquote no-no that you want to avoid in general when you're sending out an email is sending folks to completely unrelated web properties than your own business's web property. Why do I say this? Because if you send people to YouTube, if you send people to Vimeo, on the right-hand side of your video is some Katy Perry music video, and I'm sure it's much more interesting than your marketing material, and you may very well lose their attention. On your own website, if you embed a video, and we can see video over at the right there, top right, if you embed a video on your own blog, nobody can change up what happens on your sidebar except for you. Nobody controls the environment except for you. And at the same time, as nobody controlling the environment, you can also add additional calls to action along the side of your blog. So a good example is if you were going to send somebody, let's say that you do sell marketing services, okay? Let's say you offer marketing services to businesses. You can explain some of your marketing tactics on your blog, and instead of sending people to YouTube to watch this video, you would embed the YouTube video on your blog, and then underneath that video, or to the right-hand side or something like that, you might have a place where people can inquire about having that service, let's say it's Facebook advertising, having that service done for them by your company. And it would take them to some kind of a proposal form, some kind of an appointment form, some kind of a free assessment form where they could then reach out and take the next step forward with you. So in that way, you can use video as your message, but still keep it on your site, still keep it within your wheelhouse. You might be able to integrate in your message some client success stories. If you're communicating regularly with your list, but they're unaware of the fact that other people have been happy working with you, that may be a detriment to them taking the next step forward. You might want to integrate client success stories into some of your examples of services that you offer, into some of the case studies of people who've bought your product and really liked it. You might want to use other real folks and client success stories actually in your message, and being able to use that to say, hey, these folks were so happy and satisfied. And if you're interested in seeing those same benefits, go ahead and purchase the product here with a 30-day free trial. Go ahead and give us a call at this phone number. Go ahead and set an appointment here. Go ahead and apply a coupon code. Whatever the case may be, we might use client success stories as a little bit of sales lubricant to be able to open folks up to our call to action, to whatever step we want them to take forward. We can also use webinars, and these do not have to be overtly salesy at all. In fact, a webinar should be meaty, it should be educational, it should be useful. So if, let's say, one of the businesses that I had started off with, getting into email marketing, selling fitness and martial arts instructional videos online, I had a webinar about how to defend yourself against larger and stronger opponents. That was one of our specialties in sort of the martial arts world, and in my competition history as a martial artist and black belt. So we had a webinar about that topic, and at the very end of the webinar, we let folks know it wasn't crazy salesy, it wasn't pushy and mean and aggressive, but at the end of that webinar, we would have a chance, an example where we'd say, hey, if you've learned a lot from this, we have a 6 DVD set or a large downloadable course that you can go ahead here and, for hanging with me in this entire webinar, you can use this code for 15% off and get the entire course now. So they learned a lot. They were able to take notes. They feel a sense of reciprocity. They've been given some great values, some great techniques, some great examples of whatever your product or service is. And then at the end, we give them an opportunity to take a step forward. So in other words, our selling, quote unquote, emails don't have to just say, hey, this email is really getting you to buy. Here's a product. Go ahead and purchase it now. No, 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 no. Our message, as you can see in these purple letters, can and should be varied. Can and should be interesting. Can and should be useful to the potential reader. But by mixing up these media, by mixing up these methods of delivery, these modes of communication, we can attract different folks who are interested in learning in different ways and continue to pull in their interest while selling. So a webinar does not have to be education and then you sell later. A webinar should open the door to a sale. An educational blog at the bottom of that blog doesn't have to be overt, doesn't have to be pushy, doesn't have to be salesy. At the bottom of that blog, why not say, by the way, if you're interested in XYZ benefits, here's our online store that you might want to check out. Or, feel free to schedule a free assessment with us, and we'd be happy to see if we might be able to help you in your business. Whatever the case may be, why not have additional calls to action in these various media? Are you using any of these? In your own autoresponders, in your own newsletters? Are you sending people to client success stories, to webinars, to educational blogs, to video and audio content embedded on your site with calls to action above, below, on the side that lets them take that next step forward? Are you doing that now? And how might you do that? In the e-commerce world, if we're looking at e-commerce specifically, this is less common in service businesses, sometimes applicable, but less common. We can use coupon codes. We can use promo codes. We can use bundles. We can use packages. We can use a buy one, get one free, buy one, get one half off. These are called BOGO offers for short there. We might have a price drop. So we might have, on a particular weekend, we might take an entire product line or one particular product and we might go ahead and drop the price on that thing. We might allow folks to get it for a cheaper price, maybe when they bundle it with something else, whatever the case may be. If you're looking to sell a core product, are you using any of these incentives? Are these continuously danced in front of people in a way that could kind of shake the credit card out of their wallet, so to speak, and give them a better reason, a better, as you can see here, incentive to be able to take that next step forward? In the service world, we might have seasonal specials. Okay, if you're in carpet cleaning, you might have a spring cleaning special. I ran a physical martial arts facility, which I sold when I was 25. And we would often have a New Year's special. We would have a back to school special, things along those lines. In the email marketing world that we run in now with CLV Boost as a consultancy, oftentimes we'll have a particular opening for a particular kind of service. Let's say a critique or overhaul of some conversion pages, some opt-in pages, some sales pages, and we might provide that service for X number of hours for 25% off what the normal price would be if we have a lot of openings at the beginning of a new season. We might present an offer along those lines. Similarly, a free assessment. We don't do too many free assessments here at CLV Boost simply because we're sometimes a little too busy for them. Sometimes it doesn't quite make sense, especially if people haven't gotten started in email marketing yet. But you might have free assessments be an applicable aspect of your own consultative sales. So folks might be able to get a free assessment for their management strategy, for their marketing strategy, whatever it is that you help with, and that might be a foot in the door to build a relationship and end up selling. In terms of e-commerce or product sales, you might have people take the next step forward by buying on PayPal. You might send them straight to an order form. You might send them an opportunity to mail you a check or order by phone. A lot of folks who are marketing to older niches, to people who are in older demographics, will ask them to mail in a check. We'll ask them to call on the phone because a lot of older folks are not as comfortable buying on the internet. You might send them to a long-form sales letter. How many of those are you using? And now, granted, I'm not telling everybody, oh yeah, you should all have a phone number. You should all accept checks in the mail. Well, not necessarily. But by golly, in certain businesses, it sure makes sense. Opening up PayPal often sure makes sense. Sometimes using an actual sales letter, not just an order form, sure makes sense. And sometimes you'll be able to shake out additional sales from people who would not have bought if you give them different ways to take that next step forward. PayPal, long-form sales letter. mailing in a check, calling up and asking questions, then buying after that. Similarly, if you're in a service business, you can ask people to call you. You can ask people to book themselves on your calendar with a calendar app such as Calendly, such as Time Trade. There's tons of these out there right now, and clients are often more comfortable doing that. Prospects are more comfortable doing that than they are actually calling you. So let them book their own time and then sell them then. Similarly, you might have an appointment form. We do this a lot with CLV Boost. We'll have folks, fill out some degree of what their problem is, what they're looking to have help with, and they fill in that form, and then we can go ahead and book an appointment directly from there. But they're more comfortable entering their information at their own leisure than making a phone call. They'd rather enter their info and have us reach out to them later. So an appointment form would be useful at all. If you're in a service business, I will tell you this much: if you only have call us at this number, you are losing out on money. People are at work. People are on the bus. People are nervous. People are scared. And many people do not want to call. Calling is a large barrier to entry. An appointment form in any service business that basically requires phone sales to get the job done, got to have appointment forms. Cannot just ask for the phone number. So let's quickly go through a few additional examples, and we're going to wrap up this presentation. Before, we saw a weak e-commerce example, or a weak, we might call this like an internet marketing online product sales example. 5 emails to educate. They involve no sales push, no links to products, no links to anything except for just sort of educating the person, building a relationship. Nothing wrong with that, but no sales initiative at all. And then email number 6, they try to sell. We had already talked about why that might be a bad strategy. If we want to sell that same product, let's say it's a product on, how to do Facebook advertising and make a ton of money on the internet. If that's your product, then we might instead switch things up and be creative and persistent. We might send 3 educational blog posts that also have a link to the product at the bottom of them. We might send a couple emails that push towards a webinar that shows people how to do a lot of these strategies themselves, but also gives them an opportunity to buy at the end of the webinar. We might bundle that marketing course with another course, and we might provide a discount, yada, yada, yada. We might carry forward with 20 emails or so, varying educational and straight up promotional content in a solid mix that gives more and more people more and more ways to buy and take the next step forward. In our boring service business example, we had folks sending out a boring monthly newsletter with no calls to action, no links, no appointment calls to action, no drivers to phone call, no nothing at all. Just an opportunity to brag and not move the bottom line, not influence the bottom line at all. Instead, we might, in this same service business, so let's say we're selling PR services to large organizations, we might have a weekly email featuring a useful blog post, and at the bottom of that blog post or in the PS of the email, we might include a free assessment link or a call us now kind of call to action. And we also might send out a monthly email featuring a webinar. So each month we might interview a new expert, and we might feature a new webinar. And these educational webinars would also, at the end of the webinar, they'd give a ton of value. They'd capture the trust and the imagination and the attention of the prospect. And at the end of the webinar, we might say, hey, if you've enjoyed this, you can also go ahead and inquire about our services by simply clicking here, by simply calling here, by simply taking the next step forward, whatever that is. And now once you've had somebody's attention for 90 minutes straight and they've built trust, they've liked you, they've learned from you, they've taken notes, wouldn't they potentially be that much more likely to take the next step forward, as opposed to you just counting on bragging emails, eventually convincing them of how darn cool you are and that they should just go ahead and call you? So instead, as you can see down here, we have month 1, month 2, month 3. We're sending out emails a little bit more frequently. We're being more educational than we are braggardly, but we're using that education to lead towards direct calls to action, making sure that month over month we are keeping the phones ringing, we're keeping the salespeople busy, and we're driving dollars through the front door with email. Any given service business with a large list that is not driving active phone calls with that list is missing out on money. Almost no exceptions. All right, so let's look at take-home tasks, and we're going to end this thing right here. You think to yourself, as we've gone through this presentation, maybe you've got some notes in front of you right now, which kinds of offer forms or incentives might be most effective for your email marketing? Could you use webinars? Might that be a fit for you? Are you not using PayPal and you're in e-commerce and you're realizing maybe that would lift sales and you could test it? Are you currently not doing any buy one, get ones and not doing any discount codes, but you're in the internet marketing or e-commerce space and you realize how useful that would be? Are you in the service business and you've never done a book yourself calendar app and you've never done a formal appointment form that lets people fill in their information and phone number rather than call you? Then you might want to integrate those. You might want to integrate video content, not on YouTube, on your own site so that you can have calls to action for a purchase or an appointment right on your site. How can you mix and match those to be useful for your business? Then, next, think about how you can add these methods into a healthy and balanced rotation so that you can constantly keep sales opportunities open with your email list. If you have an autoresponder, you have a regular schedule that you send out your broadcast messages, how can you consistently integrate these various sales incentives, these various tactics to continuously entice and educate? This is not just pitch. This is not offensive pitching 24/7, although sometimes that can work in certain contexts. This is varied educational and varied uh, uh, tactical next step forward in the sales process sorts of approaches that are far from just sort of mallet over the head buy now. How can you integrate those into your autoresponders, into your newsletter? Are you sending out a newsletter once a week? What could you do once a week to consistently trickle in some appointments, consistently trickle in some sales? Think about the tools we talked about here, and then determine for yourself 3 immediate changes that you can make to your existing routine or systems. I really would like you to be able to have a tangible takeaway, to be able to say you listened to this session and then it made a legitimate difference in your business and your own bottom line. So look at the blatant gaps, the blatant holes, the areas where you know you could integrate calls to action, you know you could be both educational and drive sales forward, and go ahead and aim to plug those in. And make a tangible difference in your existing systems, and certainly tell us about it if you do, because we always like to hear from folks who've successfully implemented our processes. So bear in mind here that persistency is just one of the many factors to success in the return on investment of your email marketing, but it is certainly one of the most important. And I hope that you've taken away a few lessons from today's video to open your mind to new improvements in your own email marketing and ultimately in your bottom line. So once again, thank you very much for viewing this CLV Boost tutorial. If you want to reach out to us at any time about any of our own various services, whether it be assessing your own email sequences, aiding in conversion rate and copywriting services, helping to adjust your broadcast schedule, or anything along those lines, feel free to reach out directly to me, Dan at clvboost.com, or you can reach us at clvboost.com/strategy and submit your own project and let us know what you're working on and see if we might be a fit for you. Thanks again for tuning into this CLV Boost tutorial. I'm Dan Fagella, and I'll catch you next time.